All right, good evening to anyone who is listening or will listen later. Today we're going to do a hopefully quick discussion of Roman citizenship. So we've already been over the secure creditor process, the admiralty process, the estate process, the beneficial owner, and so this is the last um, piece of this set of documents. It's not the last document, but this is the last piece. So next week I'm gonna go over my entire um my trust indenture document, and a lot of the documents come from the secure creditor or the admiralty or the estate or this Roman citizenship and the beneficial owner. So I'll be able to point out which document comes from where as I go over the whole list. So far, my list for my trust indenture is I do believe it's 30 documents because there's some documents I actually found when I started looking for trust indentures of this nature that actually had other documents that went with them. So I know I'm not the first person to come up with this, but some of the documents they had, it first of all, it wasn't to me, it wasn't expressed enough. Like when you do a trust indenture, it has to have all the instructions. And so if you leave things undiscussed, then you're gonna have a problem because you leave open pathways. And so hopefully by the time we talk about the trust indenture next week, you'll understand what you need in a trust indenture. I've previously said that a trust indenture is basically like your business plan. When you go through and make a business plan, it is thorough. It covers everything that relates to your particular business. Now, I do know that a lot of people haven't done business plans. They haven't completed business plans in a way that is super thorough. So that's something that we'll probably discuss after that, and then we'll start rolling through the documents. So, like I put in the chat, I would like to um, congregate on Zoom so that I can actually show documents. I still have to work that out and make sure that my internet connection in this house actually can get the job done, which I'm not sure because I haven't done Zoom here. So, but I want to be able to show the documents and talk about them. So, I'm going to work on that this week, and next week, hopefully, we'll be over on Zoom. So, again, we're talking about the Roman citizenship. Now, something I want to describe in this process is that the admiralty process is about your ship in general, your physical vessel on the seas, and it discusses how this physical vessel comes into the ground, like what happens when the physical vessel lands on shore. That is the wide general thing that um, admiralty covers. On one side of that, you have the estate process, which covers your vessel essentially as a dead vessel. And then you have the Roman citizenship process, which covers your vessel as a living vessel. And so when you put those two together, you have the two different sides of the admiralty. So the way that I have it described is the admiralty is like purple, and Roman citizenship is red, like the blood, and the estate is blue like the body. And so when you put the red and the blue together, you have purple. And so the Roman citizenship process is actually not that complicated. It's three main documents. What point? Um, okay, I have a note here that says where on land the citizen places their body and under whose authority are they on earth. That's where the Roman citizenship comes in. Now, why do you need to be a Roman citizen? We know from the this is extremely biblical in nature. We know from the Bible that when they asked, they accused Paul of being a Greek, and they were going to kill him because he was a Greek, and he said, no, no, no. I'm a Roman, you can't kill me. And they didn't at that time kill him. They did it another time, but I think he was under once he got under under a group of people who actually operated under Roman law, then they could kill him. But as long as he was a foreigner, meaning a Roman under the Greek or whatever pagan gods, or not gods, but kings or whatever he came through, he was able to maneuver and they couldn't really touch him. He was annoyance, and so they would always, kick him out. But they couldn't kill him. But when he got into Roman territory, then they could actually kill him, because he was one of their citizens. He was one of their citizens. Now, you would be maybe not so surprised to find out that amongst all the other different layers of courts that they can um, basically conjure up in this system, they also conjure up um, ecclesiastical courts, which basically that's where the Roman citizenship comes in. It puts you under an ecclesiastical court. Now, again, Patrick Devine goes into this with extreme detail, and so I'm not going to. I need to put the link of I'm going to put the list of all the videos in the chat today. I forgot to do that last time, and I'll pin it so that you can go back and look at all the videos. But he goes into extreme detail about how this spiritual process works from a legal perspective. So I'm not going to go into all of that, but I will say this. Um, if you notice, at a courthouse, they do marriages, which is a religious activity, right? And so, because they do marriages, they operate with a spiritual authority. That's why you can go get married at the courthouse with the justice of the peace. These judges are also basically ordained ministers. Now, that actually is insane, to be honest. And how that's even allowed to occur is beyond my understanding, except to say that the government made the courts their religious structure. So in England, they have the Church of England, where the king now, King Charles, is the leader of the Church of England. He is the Pope of the Church of England, but he has to get his authorization to operate from the Pope in Rome. But the Pope in Rome is not a Roman Pope, he's a Greek Pope, because there's also an Orthodox Church, which is not under the same orders as the Greek uh, Christian church that operates out of Rome. Is actually under the orders of the Roman church. So the Orthodox Church is actually set up, and this nobody goes into this, but because I'm Orthodox, I understand this. They operate under orders that is more in a line with ecclesiastical orders. So they kicked me out of my own call. That's kind of crazy. Um, Sorry. Uh, the all of the other denominational churches, Lutheran, um, non-denominational, Methodist, Baptist, all of them are under the Roman Catholic Church, which is run under a Greek structure. They deal with Greek gods, and this, it's kind of new information. So I say all that to say is, if you are a Roman citizen by nature, you opt out of the Greek structure that's running the Roman Catholic Church. But if you don't handle that part, because let's say, for example, you never got baptized into one of these non-denominational churches or something like that, even if you've never been baptized, because you were born at a hospital, especially if you were born at a hospital that was like a religious hospital or something like that, they still put you as numbers in their system. Because understand, there's an account that goes with that. And the reason to clear up all of this stuff is that there's accounts that go with all of this. Like, again, can you draw from the accounts? No, these people are gangsters. But should they have to actually get rid of the money or whatever, like dispose of the revenue they've been illegally collecting, you want to make sure that you're on the list to get uh, what is owed to you, what is owed to your bloodline. And so that's the reason to handle it. Not that they're following any of the rules, because they don't, and it is the way it is, but you want to definitely make sure that you are covered, that they can't claim to own you. It's also, I think, will help moving forward if they choose to go down the path of total surveillance. It's going to be really hard to totally surveil someone who has opted out of all of the authorities that they typically would have to do something like this. So dealing with this Roman citizenship is like it's dealing with the moral authority. So then they have no moral authority in which to interact with you. And that's kind of like the overall of why you would do this. Not because it's necessarily a dollar amount allowed to it, but it removes you from that Greek run Roman Catholic system. And especially if you have been baptized inside of one of their churches, then you're definitely in the number that no man can number. If you've ever heard the song, John saw the number. So that's just to handle that. Now, does that mean people shouldn't get baptized or whatever? No, you have to get baptized. So what I did, I joined the Orthodox Church and I got baptized to the Orthodox Church. At the tribe, because we have a lay ministry, we can also issue baptism certificates, because again, the purpose of the baptism is for the full remission of your sins. The full remission of your sins includes your debts, because in the Lord's Prayer it says, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." So that's why you can't really focus on the debtors so much after you sort of complete this process, because all of the debt is you forgive your debts and the debtors forgive you. And so all of it should just, everybody just goes to zero. And if you've ever heard my discussion of the dumb diverses, this is what they did when they issued that papal bull from the Roman Catholic Church run by Greeks. They actually pre-forgave everybody who went out and killed all the people who refused to join the Roman Catholic Church. These could have been, they killed a lot of Orthodox Christians, they killed a lot of quote unquote pagans, Muslims, people who practice indigenous religions. They killed everybody because they had permission underneath the dumb diverses to be pre-forgiven for whatever crimes they committed in the name of quote unquote the vicar of Christ, not Christ, the vicar of Christ, who was the Pope until Pope Francis a few years ago rescinded that title and no longer took on that title. So a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, people don't understand these changes and kind of what they mean and how they show up. So this is the same idea. This is the idea of what baptism was supposed to be about. When you get baptized, you get a new name. When you get a new name, you get new everything, a new ID, a new credit line, a new all of this stuff. You're a new person. And so that's how it's supposed to do. So if you don't know this, a lot of the ways that in the Underground Railroad, when they were moving people from the south to the north. Now, whether that was, good intentions or bad intentions, this is what they were doing. This is why they were the blacks, like Harriet Tubman, whoever was running the Underground Railroad, which, as an aside, I believe was an actual like railroad under the ground, but that's neither here nor there. When they were running the Underground Railroad, when they would get these people to the north, basically to the Mason-Dixon line in Pennsylvania, they were baptizing them and giving them new names. And so people who do genealogy research sometimes have a difficult time finding their ancestors after a certain point because they were run from further south. When they got to the quote unquote north, they were baptized and given a new name, and the new name separated them from the old quote unquote slavery they was under. So it's a little bit difficult to track all of that down unless for some reason they were that was documented somewhere. And honestly, they didn't document that because they didn't want the owners from the old plantation to come to the north with their slave hunters, pick people up and take them back to the south. So some people will find blocks in their genealogical research, and nobody is considering this is the reason why. I don't think I've ever said this publicly. I just kind of picked it up in doing my research on this general subject. So that is not saying that you change your name forever, whatever. In the Orthodox Church and in the traditional Roman Catholic Church, where they follow the old rules, um, they call it traditional Catholic. Um, you just get a saint name. And again, why do they pick a saint name? It's because it's just like having a guardian angel. You pick the saint that you want to be your guardian angel. And on a spiritual level, it connects you to the land. You know that this saint typically was an actual real person. There's actual real stories about this person. If you pick a martyr, you know their blood was actually shed on this land. That gives you a tie to the land that if you don't take a saint name when you're baptized, it doesn't give you that same tie to the land. That saint's name, because there's power in the name, just like there's power in the blood, that saint's name provides a sort of spiritual protection around you. So in the traditional Roman church and also in the Orthodox church, you will take a saint as your patron saint, and you take their name as your middle name. So I'm going to talk a little bit about. Let me not start with this document. Let's start with the estoppel. So there's basically three documents. There's the estoppel by deed. There's what is this one? There's the estoppel by deed. There's the ecclesiastical UCC, and there's what's this last one? Oh, um, claim of false registry that you send to the Church of Rome postmaster. Now, in Patrick's document, he didn't put it together like that. I put it together like that because I didn't want to go through the whole process of becoming my own postmaster. He and his group, that's what they did. They became postmasters. And I didn't think that was necessary. I just wanted to notify the Roman Catholic Church that I was closing my account and I want my money. So that's all I did. I didn't go through the whole process. But let me talk about this estoppel by deed. So I'm gonna read some of this. I am first name of the family name, last name, and I am standing as a free Roman people, citizen in Christ, and a Roman ambassador of Christ with my protections addressed in the Constitution and my people rights and powers per the 9th and 10th Amendments. I am here now confirming and ratifying that I am the original title owner of my individual American Roman citizen with the inherent title over all my persons using my family name, first, middle, last, as they are my slave servants. So, from reading this, I figured out that sometimes the slaves were just using the names of their masters. This adds a whole nother level of confusion to trying to do your genealogy because you may be looking for one person, but you have no idea how many people were using that name because every plantation was different. And most black people come from the black belt. And so you really don't know what was going on. Even if you were in the north, they had slaves too. And a lot of them had black slaves. Like the black people had black slaves. So you don't really know exactly what was going on. I know a lot of people like to swear by genealogy, but I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff going on that people don't understand. Okay, so I said my American Roman estate birthing entitlement certificates are, and then I talk about my birth certificate, my baptismal certificate. and my certificate of baptism. Um, but I did my had to do mine a little different because I didn't get baptized at a Roman run church. I got baptized at an Orthodox run church, so it's a little bit different. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. Therefore, I am now standing as one of the American Roman people because only a living people can receive both baptisms, whereas contractual persons cannot. As an ius genitum, a Roman people, citizen in Christ. What does that mean? Only living people can receive both baptisms. You can be baptized on paper, but you can't be baptized by water unless you're a living person. Only a living person can be baptized by water. A dead person can't be baptized by water. A person on paper cannot be baptized by water. That's the point of the birth certificate, that you were literally baptized by water. Okay. And I'm claiming my entitled inheritance and earthly estates. I am by my hand placing my original written title, my living land boundary marks under my seal to ratify my sole ownership of the identified title, land deed, and all attachments as my estoppel deed, a free and clear title deed to my American inheritance land bank estate and all associated entitlements, because we have no idea what they've been doing with this stuff. I'm also claiming my Roman people citizen in Christ, royal letters of patent per my name, birth certificate number, for my American Roman inheritance land bank registered book entry. Basically, your birth certificate is a inheritance land bank book entry. Because these books have multiple layers and multiple meanings. It's held within the Philadelphia Treasury as a branch of the Roman Empire Treasury per my private individual banker's lien. So if you got your banker's EIN, it refers to that here. I have self-created my following protectionary and estoppel deed persons under my family commerce title name, first, middle, last, and is an individual banker, a foreign grantor trust, and estate. I did all three, but of course you don't have to. I therefore have the following Roman ambassador and constitutional self rights and powers as self defense, self evidence, self executing provisions per the empire and international law, self insurance, and self preservation because of the constructive and willful desertion of the corporate government commercial trust obligation by the trustees. So this is basically saying that the Roman Empire never died. I know the British like to say, oh, the sun never sets on the British Empire. The Roman Empire never died. It just relocated over here to America. And that's definitely something they don't want you to know, but that's like clearly what's going on because they follow so many of the Roman rules and laws. The entirety of common law is Roman law. Like we looked at the Hammurabi Code, which is basically the precursor for Roman law, and they follow that too. They use again, they will use whatever is available to them that works, and that's why you got to seal all the X's because it's just a lot. All right. I'm now standing over the Roman national and state provincial government and corporate created Gaius in legis persons as dead certificates of trust accounts held as last name accounts using my family name, which have been used as a theft of my true identity, a constructive beneficial fraud. That's why you have to do the beneficial owner paperwork in order to obtain commercial trustee payments twice fold and impose corporate income taxes upon me. This is willful desertion of the corporate CFO trustees trust obligations and the trustees destruction of the trust accounts at the same time. So basically, what he's saying is not only did they take over the accounts, they also destroyed the accounts. So again, people are out here thinking they got all these accounts and they got all these money in them. And it's true, but it's also not true because as soon as they issued the accounts, they destroyed the accounts. Or they folded the accounts into other accounts. And they do this all the time. Every time you open a new account, you get the access to it. They fold the account and fold it into their stuff. It's some of the most insane stuff I've ever seen. Therefore, I have to stop any further usury and controls over my American estate and entitlement assets by the United States state of governmental fidelity and guarantee companies. That's what the states use to get bonds under the foreign banking controls. I am absolving and redeeming the companies for their part in their false and deceptive fidelity letters of credit, collateral estoppels, if they restore to me all of my entitled estates, rights, powers, and assets, or they will face charges for my continued just banking deprivation and their beneficial usury of my estates and entitlement assets held under their fidelity letters of credit, collateral, trade acceptance, estoppels as book entry securities, and their guarantee assurance fund debts within the Federal Reserve Banks, as my reserve securities and credits have not yet been released. Because again, when you send out documents, once you get a few, some of these things done, you send out documents called letters of credit, and you say, "Hey, I need you to send me this. I need you to send me that," especially that fiscal service bureau in Philadelphia. You're supposed to be able to send your receipts to them, copies of your receipts, and they're supposed to send you money back in return. That's how it's supposed to work. So you're supposed to front the money on the front side, and they're supposed to reimburse you. That's how the system is supposed to work. A one way the system could work if they followed any of the rules, which again, as I've mentioned, they don't. So that's the estoppel by deed. I'm just going to talk quickly about the postmaster thing, because it's a really short letter. It basically just says, by the living will of this executor, this presentment is being imposed upon the Church of Rome Postal Treasury Office to provide the inherent relief from the false registries. And this talks about the Admiralty laws. This executor is claiming the following USI. Oh, I should have put MD. Anyway, corporate entity, first, middle, last, estate accounts under their false registry documents that are being held in the Church of Rome Postal Treasury deposits. So this is just a little short letter you send to them saying, "Hey, release this information and stop playing with me." All right, and the last document is the UCC. So this ecclesiastical UCC, I think it's one more, but whenever somebody's ready to get to it, I'll be going back over it again. This UCC is similar to the document I just read, but it lays it out in sorry guys, a more detail, exactly what you're claiming and why. So, for example, in the ecclesiastical UCC, you include a copy of your birth certificate that they gave you. You include a copy of your social security card. You include your numbers like you do on the non UCC. Oh, I said we're going to talk about that too. I have to actually show you that. And what once you become an ecclesiastical person, and you're operating under ecclesiastical law, then you can become an ecclesiastical notary. Because a notary is just a witness. And basically, because when you're doing ecclesiastical documents, you have to go to somebody who is in this status. This is a very selective status. So you actually can't go to a regular notary for this, or even the tribal notary per se. I can do it because I'm in this ecclesiastical state, but other people, if they haven't done all this stuff, they wouldn't be qualified to witness this document for you. So you, as an ecclesiastical state notary person, can witness a document for yourself under your ecclesiastical state name, which is why when you become an ecclesiastical person, use a different name. For me, I use my tribal name incorporated with um um my saint name. Um but that's something that by the time you get to this stage you'll have thought through it, because um that name, whatever name you pick for your ecclesiastical state person, that's a name that you will use um moving forward. Like if you have to put on the hat of being the former slave, then you put on that hat and use that name. But if you're just out in the world, you operate under your ecclesiastical name. So, for example, um, I'm Sophia. That's part of my ecclesiastical name, my ecclesiastical title. So that's what I go by. I have a tribal title. I go by that too. I have a bunch of names and titles. It is what it is. It depends on what scenario I'm in, which name or title I use. And so that is something that you don't stop doing. Like, I have a tribal ID, and I that's the ID that is in the front of my wallet. I carry my state issued driver's license in a zipped pocket in my purse. I don't use it unless for some reason I need it in a location that will only accept a state issued driver's license. In all other cases, if someone were to pull me and ask me for my ID, the first ID I'm showing them is my tribal ID. If they don't like that ID, I have my um, um, passport identification, which doesn't have an address on it, inside my wallet. I don't know why I did that. That's so weird. What I did when I finished this document, this ecclesiastical UCC, I put it together with my non UCC and my UCC one, and I called it a tri UCC. And so when I was sending out documents, by the time I got to this, I stopped sending out documents to companies because I knew they weren't actually going to adhere to them. And I was tired of wasting ink and money trying to send these things to people and they don't want to pay attention to them. So what I had decided at this point, once I finished this process, I was like, I think this is the foundation of a trust indenture. And so I went looking for a trust indenture document, um, and I found one. And I was like, okay, so I wasn't in the wrong place. I just um, nobody knew what I was talking about because they never got this far. You have to be pretty determined to get to all of this point. Now, like I said, that trust indenture I found didn't have everything that I wanted, but it had a few more things that I did include. For example, the manumission. Once you do an emancipation, and Patrick Devine goes into this. Once you do the emancipation, you have to do a manumission, and the manumission is returning that emancipated person or the emancipated property that is not was not assigned to you back over to the state for compensation. So if you know anything about the Emancipation Proclamation in that time period, when the slave owners gave up their slaves, they were compensated. They were compensated. And so when you give up your slaves through emancipation, you also supposed to be compensated. It's not, and you're supposed to be compensated through your social security funds because it's a social security administration. They administer the assets of the estate. And so those are the ones that are supposed to turn over the funds that have been assigned to that uh, slave while they were a slave because they deal with securities. They're the ones that's supposed to turn over those funds to the slave owners as the compensation. And you, being both the slave owner and the slave, means that they have to turn them over to you. So that's just a whole nother like aspect of what is supposed to happen, and again more of the stuff that they're supposed to do that they never actually get around to doing the right way. So yeah, from there I went into the tri UCC, and from there I went into the whole trust indenture. And so the way I have used my trust indenture is, or I started using it but I haven't completely used it that way because I wanted to include another estate document, and I can't seem to put my hands on it. But I sent it out. So, like for example, when I got correspondence from the IRS, I responded with my trust indenture, which is, like I said, 30 documents. It's I printed it front and back, so I think it's about 35 pages. But I responded back with a copy of this document for their records, because I know they don't have the document. I know they think I'm operating out here as some random person who, went on the internet and picked up, one teaching from one person, and so they can just ignore me forever. But that's actually not the case. So I made sure that my interactions with the government, they know who I am. And so that's what I use it for, interacting with the government. Now, I know people probably don't like that because it takes away the whole, well, I want to go after the companies and I want to make them pay and all of that. The companies own the system, the rest of the system. Why are you, the companies all practically own the government. There's no point in arguing with them. Your best bet is to keep hammering the government, because the government does have an obligation to its citizens. And because you are a citizen in good standing, because you've relinquished your slaves and manumitted them, returned them back to their rightful owner, they know that they have an obligation to take care of you. So not only have you issued a bond covering the amounts that the quote unquote slave may owe, you've also gone the extra mile of emancipating that slave and doing the manumission for that slave. They know that they have a duty to citizens in that standing. But most people, like I said, like Patrick and his group is probably the only group that did all the stuff. But did they put it together and it's in a cohesive manner and tell a cohesive story? That remains to be seen. I think that Patrick understood it, but I'm not sure his group understood. They got results. So when you get results, again, you stop looking for the truth because you got results. I didn't care if I got results. I kept looking for the answer to my question, which was, if we have a C'esti Que Trust, where's the indenture? It took 3 years to figure that out, but I didn't stop looking until I got the answer, which was I need to claim control over this trust, which means I need a trust indenture. Unfortunately, it's not like a 1-2 process and you get everything done. It's more like a 100-step process, and you don't know if any of it is actually going to work in the end, except for the fact that, like I said, no matter what, if I have a problem with somebody, I can keep escalating it to different aspects of documents that are already submitted to the government and to the state, letting them know, hey, I actually have an indenture on file. You guys have it somewhere. I have proof that I mailed it. Here's the proof. Um, Figure it out, because what you're asking for is something that I, as a former slave owner who actually remitted my slaves back to the state, am not responsible for that. And so I feel like, in general, once I do start acquiring property, it's going to be in a format that is much, it's more, it's not going to look different on the outside and from my generation, but for the next generation and the generation after that, it's going to it's going to look way different. The trajectory between my kids and like my sister's kids is like we're not even going in the same direction anymore, because they're all going to be out the system and they're not going to be able to get back in, because I'm going to seal the exit, and that's going to be the end of that. Whereas if you're a person who hasn't done this stuff for yourself, can't do it for your kids, so your kids are going to fall into the same trap, and it's just going to keep perpetuating. But by doing this process and learning how to do it and then turn around and helping other people understand it, I've been able to, put it down in such a way that it's like, okay, when I have to start working with my kids on it one by one, it'll be one step at a time as they reach a different age. One, some stuff you do at 18, some stuff you do at 21, some stuff you do at 25. When you have it set out like that, it's much easier to handle. Now, if older than 25, you got to do all the documents at once. But my daughter's about to be 18. We're gonna handle one step at a time. and I'll have a very clear idea of how to do that after going through it with her, then it'll be easy to do with my other kids. So it's kind of just one of those things that you can figure out the usefulness for it as you actually go through the process. So then that still took a long time to explain. Are there any questions in general or on this or whatever? I can take questions. Anybody has any or comments? If not, next week.
Yeah, I don't have any
Oh,
questions at the moment.
okay, great. So next week we'll discuss. I'm gonna talk about the non-UCC. I wrote that down somewhere too. Let me write it down again. I'm gonna talk about the non-UCC next week and how to use that. That's really, really important. And then we'll talk about business plans. And then after that, and then we'll start rolling through. So if anybody's working on the documents or anything like that, don't forget to reach out to me. Jeez, what's he yelling about? Um, and we'll just
So
keep
how could
moving
you
from.
build credit? Get like credit items.
Okay, so once you do all of this stuff, that's where I'm getting ready to start. I'm getting ready to start with building credit. But building it's the same way. You're not going to do anything different. You're just in a different status when you start to build your credit. Because when you build your credit, um you're going to be building a business credit. But your business is going to be a trust. So automatically it's a different like status when you started as a trust as opposed to a regular business. So I have a let me write that down too. I have the business trust. Um so what I'm going to do I'm going to build business the same way I would build business in any circumstance. I So you can't buy and sell. Okay, let me explain this. You can't buy and sell. You're not buying and selling when you're dealing with this business. You're bartering. Bartering is acceptable under Roman law. Buying and selling is not. So first you have to understand, okay, I'm bartering. I'm saying, okay, if you in the old days they would say what? If you wanted two, I'll give you a dozen eggs for, a fistful of, kale or something like that. Like they were bartering um items. But um when they introduced the concept of physical money, like with banks that you can exchange, the bartering system changed. And so instead of people saying, okay, a dozen of eggs is going to cost you a bunch of kale, now they gave that dozen of eggs a monetary value. But it's still bartering because you're offering a product and you're not requiring the person to buy it. You're not forcing them to buy it. You are just placing an offer out there. When I did the trustee training with the guy, that's how he did it. He had a physical contract that was like, this is an exchange, an even and equal exchange, blah, blah, blah. It was really, really detailed. I think it was a little overkill, but I think he was trying to prove he knew what he's talking about. But it's no point in doing that kind of stuff with me because I just be like, I don't understand what the point of that is. But you're engaged in bartering. So if you're bartering, for example, you still have to do something. Like you don't set all of this stuff up and then do nothing. And I think that's a huge misconception from everybody who does this stuff. They seem like they set everything up to basically do nothing, or they lie and sell consultations. And in the meantime, they're just using those consultations as money going into a particular system so that they can build up they can build up their credit so they can do other stuff. It's a lot of weird like games going on out here with some of these people on the internet. Like it's because they don't understand business. Once you get into the business of bartering, then you can do whatever you want, but it can't be mandatory. And this is why the government is in trouble. They make doing business with them mandatory. So they cannot barter. Therefore, if you do business with the government, you are not bartering. You're in buying and selling. Buying and selling is the exchange with the government. You take the government out of it and you do bartering. Bartering is just, I'm offering this thing. If people want it, they can buy it. And if they don't have to. It doesn't mean you have to do it with cash only or silver or gold or whatever. You can do online. It's still a business, but it's a bartering business. It's just not buying and selling. And it doesn't mean you don't buy stuff and resell it. That's not what it's a mindset. You're not buying and selling. You're adding value to something, even if the value is, hey, I got this thing imported from China and people have a hard time finding it. Now I'm selling it online. That is still bartering. It only becomes buying and selling when you actually engage the government. So if you're not engaging the government to force people to buy your product, then you're not engaging in buying and selling. But there are a lot of people that are engaged with the government. For example, if you go and sell your stuff on Amazon, now you're engaged in buying and selling. And so if you want to do that, you just open up a separate business for that. You separate. The thing about business that people don't understand is that they want to put everything under one category. No business on the planet is run by that. Everybody puts their businesses under separate things. So like if you go to buy something from Amazon and there's it's the warehouse that packs your item and the truck that delivers it to your house are two separate businesses. It could be three or four separate businesses because somebody had to pack the item into they have like these little storage bins or whatever at Amazon. So no, even go back. Somebody had to ship the stuff to Amazon, then they had to pack it into the box. Somebody had to take it out the box. Somebody put it into another box. Somebody checked it to ship it. Somebody put it on the truck. Then the truck driver delivered it to your house. If it didn't go to another truck to deliver to your house, all of those are separate businesses. They don't even get paid under the same name. If you they don't even get paid under the same name. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen, honestly. But that's what you have to do when you're buying and selling because each stage along the way is a toll. Like I talk about this a lot. They set up a toll, and so each stage along the way, somebody has to get paid. When you're bartering, it's like you see the people at flea markets with a table full of stuff. Somebody walks up and they're like, "Hey, I think I want that." And you say, "Okay, it's gonna cost you $5." They give you the $5. You give them the item. That's a direct exchange. These companies are doing multiple exchanges. So, for example, there's people who sell the service of like cold calling, right, to get customers. That's a separate toll that's set up. So a company will pay a person separately to do that. That's that's not bartering. That's buying and selling. You are selling yourself and your time to this company who is all because the company is a government agent because if you get a corporation like in the state, you're a government agent. If you get a tax ID, that doesn't make you a government agent. You need a tax ID for banking purposes. You can't get around that. And so that's their system. Tax ID is okay. When you get a sign up to be a company in a state, that means you're doing buying and selling. I mean, you're doing no, not buying and selling. You're doing buying and selling. You can't do that under your estate, your Admiralty, your Roman. You can't do any of that under those particular statutes. So I hope that answered the question because I kind of went all over the place, but you're bartering. You're not buying and selling, and that's the difference. That's the distinction. Buying and selling has to deal with dealing with the government and contracting with the government, and bartering is dealing directly with your customer. I could have said that much. I can say that much simpler. I hate when I go on tangents like that. I hope that makes sense. But we're going to talk about that because that's how you build your credit. You have a bartering business, still a business, but you're just bartering. And as you have customers buy whatever it is that you're selling, you deposit that into a bank account. And you can get a credit card because you have to buy the stuff that you're going to sell. And then as long as you're buying stuff and selling stuff, not buying and selling with a corporate entity, but literally buying products and providing it as a service for someone else, you need credit to do that. So it doesn't take you out of the system literally, it takes you out of the system energetically. And it has the same effect. It's just if anybody asks you why you're like not collecting sales taxes or stuff like that, you're in a barter system. And you can prove that because you have all this documentation to back it up. This and it doesn't even matter if you have tax credits, but um just you have to always operate with clean hands. So this gives you the ability to operate with clean hands. And this is what I'm actually pivoting to now that I've gotten all of this stuff done and I understand it because there's no one out there to explain it to me. I had to really just keep thinking like, okay, what is the issue? How do I get around this block of I know I'm a business person, but I know I can't do buying and selling. And that's the block. The block is these people who do business with the government. And the government forces people to use certain options. That's why your only options for online shopping as far as platforms are is an Amazon, is a Walmart, is an Etsy, because those companies have contracts with the government. They're government agents. And so that's why they can say, you can't sell any Pepe the Frog stuff on Etsy or whatever weird stuff they're always doing, or eBay too. All of them are the same. Companies, corporate entities supposed to deal with that as far as the buying and selling is concerned. You can go on there and buy something as an individual, but using that platform to run your whole entire business is it puts you under their system. Now, if you use like for example, Amazon has publishing. So let's say you want to publish a book and you want to sell your book